When you eat that standard American diet, those foods are engineered to make you crave them. You know, if the cravings are bad enough, you know, you'll make a casserole out of paper clips and shoelaces, just anything to. But what is going on that I cannot see? I can't see inside my arteries. I can't see my heart. So why not just proactively do something good for it? Because you never know. I can kind of get on a soapbox about how much I appreciate the carnivore community, the positivity and the education, and they're just friendly.
Hello, Wellness Warriors. Yeah, today we're talking about the fact that most of us, we start keto for weight loss or health reasons. Some of us even do it because of like sports that we're doing. But today I'm talking to somebody who started keto for none of those reasons. So I'm going to throw it over to Kelli. You want to tell us how you became on this journey?
I first became aware that there was a thing called a keto diet in probably 2017, 2018. And my mom was telling me about it. My mom had a long career as a registered nurse, and we both are just into wellness in general and learning about things like that. So she made me aware that this was a thing called a keto diet and talked to me a little bit about it. And I was actually getting married later in 2018 in September. I didn't need to lose weight. I was just looking to kind of maintain and wanted to look nice in my dress and in the photos and stuff. And so when I learned a little bit more about keto, I did what I thought was keto. As it turns out, I wasn't really doing it right. I was eating healthy. I was eating clean, even though technically it probably was too many carbs to be called keto. But anyway, got married, felt great, fit the dress, hit my goal, all that stuff. Keto still had my attention. Because I was watching Dr. Berg videos. He was kind of the first one where beyond us just talking about it and me being aware that keto was a thing, I learned more about it from Dr. Berg and kind of the particulars. Since then, I again, would try and do better sometimes than others at eating keto and stuff over the next several years. Probably, I don't know, a year and a half ago, I became aware that there was this thing called carnivore. Again, had no clue that there was a diet out there that was labeled carnivore or that somebody could just eat meat. And I was already learning about the benefits of a low carb diet. Like the main one was people wanted to lose weight and people did it for insulin issues and to prevent diabetes. So those were mainly the two things. And I never had didn't even almost have any issues like that. I've never had to worry about weight loss, never was even close to being diabetic, no autoimmune issues, no mental health struggles. But when I started hearing about these things, and then especially carnivore, and people saying it cured their psoriasis and it reversed their diabetes, you lost 80 pounds. You were able to resolve an achy hip issue. Even people talking about it really reducing your chances of dementia. So it was just one of those things where even though technically I felt pretty good, especially pretty good for my age, felt like I looked okay in my clothes, it got my attention and I just couldn't ignore it because I thought, yeah, I feel good at 48. I'm 48 now. And I thought, but what am I going to feel like at 68? What am I going to feel like at 98? And what can I do to help delay any of this stuff that's inevitably going to come? Because no matter how good your health is, you can't kick the can forever. These videos got my attention and I started focusing more on animal products and I've never, I may have had brief phases for a couple of weeks where I could call myself a carnivore, but I have not ever truly been able to say, oh, I'm carnivore, like, Dr. Baker or somebody. But I wanted to talk about some of the things that I have dealt with that I feel like everybody eventually deals with. But despite enjoying such good health, in starting into my 40s, I started to notice things like I have a desk job and I would get achy wrists and elbows and things after a long day at work or playing guitar or something. When I'd get out of bed, my ankles and my feet would pop a little bit. I could hear the joints, and my body was just kind of talking to me and saying, "You're in your 40s." And like, I would say one issue that I had that actually was kind of, just something that all of these other things that I'm talking about, like the occasional achy wrists, it didn't really affect my life per se. It didn't stop me from doing anything. But one thing that affected me a little more was like, especially if I would travel and I'd be at a hotel where you didn't quite know what your food options were going to be. Uh, and maybe we had stayed out late and, because we were on vacation and stuff. And the next morning I would get low blood sugar and I would start to feel like, I have got to get something to eat. And I'd get faint and lightheaded. So, long story short, since I improved my diet, eating mostly animal products, we'll call it ketovore for the sake of this conversation. But I cannot remember the last time that I woke up panicky thinking, I have low blood sugar. I've got to get something to eat. That just does not happen anymore. And my inflammation, talking about the achy wrists and the feet popping and the joints and stuff, gone. Like I do not end a day at work anymore going, yeah. I just go about the second half of my day and can do anything that I want.
What I find really interesting, the fact that your issues started at 40. So if we back up a second, mom introduced you to the keto style diet. How old were you?
I got married when I was 43, so 42, 43.
Okay, so basically I live 0 to 40-ish, 42, doing a normal diet, like normal standard American diet.
Yeah. Again, I joke around that my story is kind of boring because I have no, what do you call them, scale victories. All my victories are non-scale victories. Um, and I had no childhood trauma, real healthy childhood, happy, great family. Um, and so, like, we were fed nourishing foods as kids. Food was never used as a reward or a weapon. And we had candy on Christmas and Easter, just like every other kid, but that's when we had candy. It wasn't just this constant diet of, I want sweets, I want sweets. And, I'd get it. And so I got a really good start. And so I didn't have problems with like emotional eating. Um, but to your point, Violet, I did. I still ate the standard American diet. I went to college and I ate like every other college student, pizzas and patty melts at 3 in the morning with a side of hash browns and wash it down with a Dr. Pepper. And so, yes, to answer your question, I was eating the standard American diet. I drank socially throughout my 20s and 30s. I still do occasionally drink socially. And again, I hope that I always keep it under control so that, I can enjoy stuff like that in moderation in social settings. But, I drank socially, but sometimes I was pretty social, like in my 20s. So I wouldn't want to be quite that social at this age. And just knowing what I know about the damage that alcohol and carbs does to your body. And again, when you do that kind of stuff now, your body really talks to you. It says, I don't like that much alcohol. Don't do that. So yeah, again, going back to your question, I ate the standard American diet pretty much, but luckily didn't suffer with binge eating disorders and had the metabolism to where I could get away with it. But one reason why I'm so passionate about cleaning it up now and eating better now is because I got away with it for a long time. But we all know the human mortality rate is 100%. Something's going to happen and I can't get away with this forever. And if I do live to be 98 or whatever, I want that time. I want those last 20 years to be quality.
So you mentioned that you and mom have always had that wellness kind of focus.
Hmm.
Of course, mom being a nurse, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm growing up in a household where you're saying, oh, once in a while, I'm getting candy. It's like it wasn't a normal everyday thing. I'm wondering when you go off on your own, So whether it's as a teenager and I've got pocket money, or as a college student and I'm out there doing my thing, am I still kind of keeping to those, like, yeah, junk foods for once in a while, or does it ever go off the rails?
Yeah, it does go off the rails. Again, it's not in the form of binging and purging or hiding in the closet and eating a gallon of ice cream. My going off the rails, first of all, for whatever reason, I've not really ever been interested in sweets. I don't, not crazy about chocolate. I've had a bag of Hershey's chocolate in my freezer for like 3 years, and I just don't care that it's there. So, my weaknesses are crunchy, cheesy, salty snacks like the Bugles and Pringles and combos and Doritos and Cheetos and stuff like that. And if there is a bag of that in the house, that's all that I eat until it's gone. And so it just got to, when I realized that was my weakness, I just had to, that stuff can't be in the house.
I think that what happened in your 40s is interesting only in that it was delayed, which is what happened. Really well um, raised people. So, like, when we have parents who are health conscious, and in your case, mom's a nurse, in my case, we're from the islands, and it's just like this whole candy thing just wasn't a thing. So, when you're being raised on food, the it's not as early, right? Now, here's what's interesting for me though. You were able to make it all the way to 40s. My pain still started in my 20s, even though I didn't have all the junk food. So it is interesting how our bodies are different and they help us in different ways. And so I what I love about this story is it's helping everyone to understand that at some point, if we're overdoing things, it's still going to show itself at some point. Like, there's no getting away from it, as you said, right? There's one end result that's going to happen, but how can we make it to our older age feeling amazing? And what you're trying to do now is let's correct now. So you had joint pain, partially from work, partially from your. Do you work as an artist, or is that for fun?
The guitars are for fun. I work in my job is in software.
So how long did it take? You changed your food? How long did it take?
How long did it take? Not very, not very, because there again, Violet, I was already starting ahead of the game because my body was, for the most part, healthy, and all it needed was a little help to like kick into high gear. And once I really started feeding it the right things, it was, I didn't have to wait for months to see results. And I didn't have horrible keto flu. And I didn't have that terrible adjustment period with my digestion that some people report once they really increase the animal products and the fat in their diet. So I can't even really report that that part of it was bumpy or painful or anything like that. And my problems, any achiness that I had was luckily intermittent and mild. So I never had that revelatory moment where the skies opened up and said, I can walk today without pain. Because some days I could, it wasn't even a thing. When I really paid attention to it and was kind of taking inventory, I thought, wow, I have not had that been like this after a day of work. Like I said at the beginning of this, in I don't know how long. So just that feeling of wellness, I thought, oh yeah, I could get used to this.
And then, of course, you said that part of the interesting first thing that you did notice is that your wedding dress like fit a little differently just in the short period of time between starting it before the wedding and getting to the actual wedding.
Yeah, just eating cleaner and being more mindful of what I was putting in my body. That made an amazing difference. One thing I didn't mention this, didn't necessarily struggle with it, but just one thing I noticed about myself that I might be kind of hereditary is I'm prone to swelling. Like if I eat a lot of salty foods and I sit with my legs in a dependent position, then I'll get a little puffiness in my feet and my lower legs. I'll notice by the end of the day, or maybe a long plane flight or something. Um, and I also noticed, and I had reported this to my mom the other day, that I had been doing some things where normally I should have been a little puffier in the lower extremities. And because I was eating cleaner and because I was doing my exercises like I was supposed to, I noticed that even that was less than ever before.
I'm wondering about what the difference is because, for example, like you were standard diet, but always with this mindfulness about health. What did you need to change to get because you didn't have keto flu, so I feel like you're one of those people that was probably eating pretty healthy anyway. But like, what did you need to do? What was the change that you made? Wellness warrior, I have a favor to ask you. Sharing our stories is what will help new people to understand that keto actually works. So if you have improved your health, mental health, or weight through eating healthy keto, please look in the description. There's a form to fill out so that we can do an interview and you can share your story. I want to help more people, and I think that together we can help people to understand that keto is more than a diet. It's a way of life that gives you your life back. I'm not a special snowflake. I know that you also have lived amazing things. So let's change this together. The form's below. So let's start with the first change, which was going keto-ish. What did you need to do?
I had to, I would say the biggest like disruption to my life was probably the social aspect. Uh, I had to navigate that because I was used to just being able to go to a restaurant and get literally whatever I wanted. Big bowl of cheesy pasta, bottomless bowl of pasta, endless breadsticks. I could eat as many breadsticks as I wanted. I will say a little side note. Um, again, in my 40s, I did start to notice that, I had been able to do that for so long and got away with it. As I sit here today, I probably weigh 140 pounds. Every time I get on the scale, 140, 140. And it's been like that for a long time, the past couple of years. Um, if I get off the rails too much and I'm eating all that pasta and the breadsticks and whatever, my highest weight has been 157. I remember getting on the scale and seeing 157 because one day I kind of just noticed these genes are defective. They have shrunk, and it's the genes. It can't be me. Right. So I get on the scale, it's 157, and I go, oh, well, I don't really want to buy new jeans, so I'm just going to pay a little more attention to what I'm doing. I'm too cheap to want to buy new jeans, so that's part of the reason.
And that was pre learning and doing keto.
That was, yeah. And I have not been that heavy since. And that was probably 8 or 10 years ago or more. So I've stayed under that since then. But getting back to your question about what has changed, yeah, socially, um, like I love going out with friends and I still do. But instead of just consuming whatever food is laid on the table and having a couple, big pours of wine, I'm just a little more mindful about it. I do still have the occasional cocktail, but it's a glass of bourbon. It's not a couple giant glasses of wine. And if I have something to eat like everybody else, and if somebody orders some onion rings, it's not like I'm not going to have an onion ring. I'm not going to have all the onion rings. But it's just better mindfulness. I shop differently at the grocery store now. That has changed. My refrigerator in my pantry looks a lot different than it did before I became aware of keto. My husband and I are cooking and eating differently. And, um, you know, I'm going to kind of get off on another subject by saying that, but my support system, I couldn't ask for better. Like my friends and my family, they don't make fun of me like, oh, the meat eater, the carnivore. Uh, they're supportive. They're understanding. They ask me about it, and want to learn more. My husband is supportive. He's like, whatever you're eating, I'll eat. I love the idea of being healthier. My friends they want to be healthy too, and so they don't all necessarily eat carnivore or low carb, but they're mindful people. So when they see me doing my thing, they don't make fun of me because they're doing their thing, and we just support each other.
Well, first of all, it's nice that your husband was able so quickly. It sounds like there was no struggle there.
There wasn't, and like he said, I'll eat whatever if I'm cooking, and it's just all meat with no side dish, which we've started to kind of do that more. I feel less obligated to have a side dish because he has learned more about this and why I'm doing it and the benefits. And so, if all I've got is ribeye steaks for dinner, he's like, "Bring it on, let's have ribeye steaks." And he doesn't eat low carb or carnivore or anything like that. He does the best he can under the circumstances because he's got to travel for work. He's got like a big work truck that's hard to get into parking lots to certain restaurants to get. Like he can't just get any kind of food that he wants. He kind of has to make do. And if it's McDonald's, it's McDonald's. He just does his best. But what I love is that he's just so supportive of what I'm doing.
One of the things you talked about in the outline that you sent me was that you have better mental focus and better work for performance. I'm wondering, like, how does that manifest itself? What are you seeing?
I do work from home, and so I'm on the phone a lot, and that just requires concentration to be on, and you don't have the convenience of seeing people's body language and being able to just look over on somebody else's laptop and point things out. And so it requires a special kind of focus, I feel, if you really want to do it well and give people the respect and pay attention and all that kind of stuff. So it can be mentally pretty tiring to have that many discussions throughout the day. And it used to be that before I started eating more mindfully and doing the low carb, I would get that 2 o'clock malaise that some people talk about. And because I start my day early, I start it at about 6 o'clock in the morning because I'm out near the West Coast and I kind of have to work on East Coast time. So I start early. I get that 2 o'clock. I used to get that 2 o'clock malaise, and I felt like I was climbing the walls. I wanted to raid the pantry and eat everything in it, and that I think that had to partly was due to some mental fatigue. And again, Violet, I just, there are certain things I cannot remember the last time that I had to struggle with that. I don't get that 2 o'clock malaise, that boredom, that mental exhaustion. I just am able to work and I eat my meals. I'm on a nice schedule. I know what to eat. I know a good time for me to eat it so that I feel good and am at my best. And it just feels nice to not have to worry about dreading when 2 o'clock comes around and you want to raid the fridge.
Actually, since we're on the topic of that, like, how many meals do you eat?
Yes. I've never been one who could do OMAD. I didn't try real hard, but you kind of know yourself. And if I thought, oh, this is something that really would work for me, I totally would do OMAD. But my sweet spot seems to be I wake up, like I say, a little before 6 and I start working and I take some phone calls in the morning, check my email, do a little work. And I'll usually eat at around 10 or 11 in the morning. I also have coffee. I sip on coffee during my phone calls in the morning. Black, I don't put cream in it. I don't do bulletproof or anything like that. But my first meal is 10 or 11 in the morning. And then I'm perfectly content. I don't always hit the mark, but I'd be perfectly content to have my last meal at 3 or 4 o'clock. And I often do. Sometimes I like to wait and eat with my husband after he gets home from work. So I will stretch out my eating window, but I do really try to do intermittent fasting because that's a huge key for me, which I would love to talk about in just a second. But then what I eat is, almost always it's the 10 or 11 a.m. meal is going to be a couple of eggs and a couple of sausage patties or bacon. If I happen to have some keto breads in the house, like they've got these little zero carb sandwich thins, if I have some of those, I'll make myself a little breakfast sandwich with like cheese, sausage, and egg or something. But it's almost always eggs and something, a real simple meat. And then dinner is, we have a lot of halibut, salmon, venison, and beef at our house right now. We bought a half beef to try to save some money and get some really good quality meat. My husband harvested a deer recently up in the northern mountains of Utah. beautiful deer meat. And then we went fishing in Alaska in June and caught like 90 pounds of fresh salmon, wild caught halibut and salmon. And so that is what I eat.
That sounds very, very good. I mean, you guys are in an ideal story there. So many people, the hardest thing for them is the cost, that they're afraid of the cost. I don't even say, I'm not sure that it's warranted, but there's a fear of the cost. But I mean, if you can catch your meat and fish, then hey, that's does cut down on the cost.
It does. And because, we eat so much animal product. I mean, Violet, how much do you think you spend in a month at the grocery store now?
Well, I've actually been trying to keep track of that because of, and it turns out that when I do buy any kind of meat, I'm usually spending about $100. So probably for the whole month, I'm paying, well, it's hard to tell. I haven't done the math yet, but I'm going to guess somewhere between 200 and 300 for the entire month in terms of my total meal.
I would defy you to find somebody else who eats a standard American diet who could beat that,
No, I for sure not.
right?
It's crazy. And when you catch your stuff, it's even better.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I definitely, I'm not sure. Those are guess numbers because I haven't done the math yet. Actually, one of the things I'm wondering about, because, okay, so those are your typical meals. I would love to know when you're feeling like, I want to be a little creative. What's the most creative thing that you actually make for yourself as a meal?
One thing that has been a real tool for me, my mom and I talk about our tools to our success. And one of mine is I make a very low carb burrito that I stash in the freezer. I make like 20 of them at a time. And I found these really good zero carb tortillas that are just delicious. I don't live on these things. I try not to just live off of these things like the that are made of keto versions of quote real food. I think you were interviewing somebody the other day, and they were talking about uh, just what a slippery slope keto snacks can be. Like a keto version of an Oreo cookie. It's an Oreo cookie, you know. But but anyway, the low carb burritos. I put together a really good recipe for those, and each burrito has like three carbs, and sometimes it's a real lifesaver if I'm having a busy day at work and I need something filling and I want some flavor, and I don't feel like grilling some meat. Then that can be a real treat, and it's only three carbs.
You still have some go-to quick things in the freezer. So one of the things that at least for myself anyways, it's the preparation was always the thing that was the hardest for me. So before I started my lifestyle, like my keto lifestyle, it was a lot of the reason I was eating wrong was just because you can buy frozen dinners frozen, right? And I feel like it's kind of cool that you found a way to have something frozen, but it's still very healthy.
You have to, don't you?
Yeah, well, so I've taken a different approach. Like my approach is different only because I don't tend to do processed food. So that's why my approach is a little bit different. I just spice the stuff before I put it in the freezer. So that when I pull it out, it's just throw it in the pan, throw it in the oven, throw it in the water. Like as soon as it's defrosted, I can just cook it. But that's the only difference. I think I still have to cook it on the same day. So
But I love that you found something that really seems to work for you. If you just douse it with some seasoning, then that's just one less thing that mentally you probably say, well, at least I don't have to season it. I can just drop it into the pan.
well, this is a trick I learned. Oh no, I'm not gonna remember his name. But he just like ground meat and like any meats that you can flatten, he flattens them in the containers that he's freezing so that you can cook them faster without the frosting. I was like, that's genius.
That is brilliant.
That is genius. So it's kind of cool.
I love the tricks. Like, and one thing that popped into my mind when you said about the flattening of meats, I've really appreciated Kelly Hogan and her telling her story because she made it okay in my mind to eat nothing but ground beef hamburger patties if I wanted to. I was like, oh my God, you can live off of hamburger patties. I can do that. Like in a pinch, I could do that. And so I just, if I can kind of get on a soapbox about how much I appreciate the carnivore community for a second, just the positivity and the education that's out there. And if you look at everyone's videos, everyone looks so like healthy and passionate, and they're just friendly. They're not militant about it and don't call each other or other people names for not doing carnivore. And you look, and people, like the whites of your eyes are just so bright, and you have nice skin. You just look like a healthy person, and so much of the carnivore community does.
It's interesting to me too because I definitely feel in our keto community, which theoretically I put myself there because I do eat veg. So I do have once or twice a week. But I feel like one of the problems in the keto community is the processed stuff that's still there, that's still like that door that's open to fake foods.
Yep.
And I don't think that we understand enough that there's a cephalic part of this. Like your brain interacts with what's in your mouth and believes it's whatever it believes it is, whether or not there's carbs in it, whether or not, right? And I find that's really hard for a lot of people to accept. And when they get pulled towards overeating, they try to. So I've watched a lot of videos recently where you have people who were keto who are now reintroducing carbs, and the final conclusion is, well, it just doesn't work. And it's like, but were you allowing things in that shouldn't have been there?
Yeah, I did notice that I did better when I got a little more strict. Like for a while there, when I did what I was calling keto, I was looking for keto breads and any low carb tortilla, anything that said keto on it, keto cereal, keto cookies. I was like, oh, yay, keto. I'm staying on the plan. And um, it only, like you just said it. I mean, if you're eating keto cookies, you're eating cookies, and it's going to make you want more cookies and the wrong kind of cookies at the wrong time and too many of the cookies. And so I felt so much better, and it really helped me get rid of that climbing the wall feeling that I was talking about. Like even when you're eating keto potato chips or snacks or whatever, it's still a snack. And if you don't have them, you're like, I gotta have them. So when you kind of cleanse yourself of that and get it out of your system, it feels so much better, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I would even say in your situation, so the fact that you work from home and your spouse doesn't, which means that you're in the house by yourself, like seconds from the food, right? And so the mindset that you need to have. So I'm kind of curious for you, like you've been working from home 20 years, but you've been keto for like 8, right? Ish. Okay. So how's the difference? Like your search for the kitchen then versus now?
I love that I don't have the preoccupation anymore that I used to, because when you eat that standard American diet, you're inevitably, those foods are engineered to make you crave them. So just not having that preoccupation and being able to really focus on my work and knowing that dinner is going to come and it's going to be satisfying and I'm going to feel fine. I'm not going to go without. I'm not going to be climbing the walls. So that's the difference. Is sometimes when I was trying to work and focus, or if I was working on something that was kind of difficult, and I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to. I'm like, I can't solve this problem. Oh well, I'll just go eat, because if I'm eating, then I can't work. I need a lunch break. And that eating would kind of be used as an excuse to get away from a challenging problem at work. So I used it as an escape. And like you said, it's there. No one's here. No accountability. No shame. But now, not keeping the food in the house and creating, I think, what Dr. Phil calls a no fail environment. So not even having that stuff in your home. But if the cravings are bad enough, you'll make a casserole out of paper clips and shoelaces, just anything to satisfy that hunger. But yeah, just not having it, and then kind of training my body and getting it used to knowing that you will be satisfied. It won't be garbage, and you're going to feel great. So that's the difference, and it feels pretty darn good.
It sounds to me like when you talked about going out with friends, you don't have that struggle though. Like you can be out with friends and order what's healthy for you.
Yeah, I do feel like I can. And I'm not like poor Michaela Peterson, who she walks within 3 feet of edamame and is sick for 6 months, you know? So I can order a steak and not have to worry about if there's a little seed oil on it, then I'm not sick and breaking out in hives for the next 3 months. I can totally handle that right now. Again, there's you kind of know what you can get away with, and that's what I can get away with. Still feel great, and who knows, Violet? I might reach a point as I get older where I do need to pay a little more attention to if there's something on the steak on the grill, and maybe need to cut out dairy. But I'm just not there yet.
I want to offer you a different idea.
Please.
Sometimes it's not about getting old that makes it happen. One thing that I will say is that every time I leveled up, my body showed me more I could do. And so the nice thing is that our body wants to be healthy. If you give it room to be healthier, it's going to say, "Hey, can we do this too?" And you're going to see something else. So I would also offer you the idea of thinking like, how amazing will it be if my body shows me, "Hey, if you stop this, this is going to go away."
That's true. I mean, I'm already on board with that because I've started eating this way when technically I didn't have to. My clothes fit. I was enjoyed the good health and everything, but I'm so on board with that, and I would consider it because there are still a couple of things. Well, one thing in particular that I deal with is I have this post nasal drip or some kind of allergy thing going on, and it does not change, it doesn't stop. And so maybe one of these days I might just be like, I've had it. Maybe I'll try to cut out dairy or be more mindful of the seed oils and stuff like that. Who knows? But that's a great idea. That's a great tip.
You actually had said earlier you wanted to talk a little bit about intermittent fasting.
That is so key for me, I have found, because even when I wasn't real disciplined about exactly what I was eating, what really makes a huge difference for me is when I eat. uh, and I'm not going to do it. I have like around the holidays and stuff. I eat whatever is there at whoever's house we're having the dinner at, and I'll have pie and dinner rolls and stuff like that. But if I keep it like between mid morning and not too late in the afternoon or evening, um, it's amazing. I don't gain a pound. I still feel really good. So, yeah, I'm glad you reminded me to mention that because if anybody out there is listening and has thought about intermittent fasting, I can say that really works well for me. Do you do that?
Well, I'm one meal a day,
Oh, yeah, you definitely
right?
do.
And I feel like so everybody's different too. I think that some people, even if they were one meal a day or whether they're doing a eating window, it sounds to me like you're talking about a 6 hour eating window or a 4 hour eating window, something like that. We still need to be mindful of whether or not eating those things cause us to chase. So it really sounds like you're because you've always been healthy and you didn't start this because of overeating or that kind of thing. You don't end up chasing anything. You never want to binge, it sounds like.
Right.
I would say that knowing well, okay, so my story, if I let nuts in, oh my God, like I can end up like just wanting to eat the whole bag. So I think we all have to know what our limits are. And for me, like I wouldn't holidays don't change how I eat. Let me put it that way. Holidays don't change how I eat. I always eat the same way. And well, the other reason, if I'm gonna the other share is that just because I wouldn't gain weight doesn't necessarily mean that the internal damage isn't happening. I'm really trying to be more mindful of that because even for some healthy things, the more I read, the more I'm learning that some plants do certain things in the body and right. So I'm trying really to be careful that the plants that I do let in are the right ones.
You really bring up some great points, which just to kind of tack on to that, we're talking about things you can see and things you can feel, like the arthritis and the weight loss, and like Jen from Delighted to Meet You clearing her psoriasis. That's all stuff you can, that's powerful, that's dramatic. But to your point, when I started thinking about doing this, I thought, well, I don't really need to lose weight, and I don't have psoriasis, and I don't have diabetes and stuff. But I've got a couple things. But what is going on that I cannot see? I can't see inside my arteries. I can't see my heart. I can't see my liver. It feels fine, but I can't see any of this stuff. So why not just proactively do something good for it, because you never know.
That's part of the reason that I was excited to talk to you actually. Not even just that I was excited because you didn't start from one of those typical reasons. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that we're making today is looking at our young people and saying, "Oh, you're thin, you're fine."
Yep.
If my body isn't making me gain weight or messing with my skin or messing with my joints, it's doing something with that sugar. And we all need to be wondering what's happening in my kid if that's not what I'm seeing.
So true, Violet. And that's why I wanted to come talk about it also, is because I don't want people to think that the way that we eat is a gimmick or a fad. It's meat, and this is not sponsored by the beef industry. You know what I mean? It's not some big propaganda conspiracy by some big food industry. This is just people who are saying, we want to shout from the rooftops, I feel amazing, and I want to spread the word so you can feel amazing too. But I just want people to know that this is not only for people who need to lose weight or cure their diabetes. It's for everybody. And I love how Dr. Berry is starting to call it the proper human diet and drill that into people's heads, because that's what it is. Violet, I wanted to ask you, I'm glad I remembered to ask you this. Do you ever walk into the grocery store and are you ever just struck by the absurdity of the fact that over 90% of what's in there really is not fit for human consumption?
Oh my gosh. Since learning what I learned, what are we now, almost 6 years ago, it's amazing to me how I just do the outside tour of the building and leave, right? I get my meats and like, well, my kids are not keto, so I get their dairy and whatever. And it's just like I just do the outside tour and I leave. And interestingly enough, even though the kids are not keto, it's very rare that I buy things from the inside of the store. It's like, you guys have money, go for it. But like, so the truth is like, I mean, of course, I still buy cereal and I buy some things, but not as much as I was buying before. And as I said, like my grocery bills are so much lower and they're eating so much better because at supper they are eating what we're eating a lot of the time. So it's amazing to me that we can show our kids what is better for them, or we can try to force them to do something. And I mean, I have to take responsibility for the fact that I didn't learn this earlier. When I learned it, my daughter was 13. 13. Yeah. So when I learned it, it was kind of like, am I going to start wrestling with her on something that I accidentally, right? But by allowing her to see my improvements, she's actually making better choices. And so, I'm very certain that at some point she's going to be much more focused on it. And I think this is part of why I talk about this stuff. I invite people like you to talk about this stuff because the more we talk about it, the more we'll help people to see that there's an easier way to get healthy than medication and surgeries and all the stuff that people are doing. And it hurts less, by the way. It's like quite tasty.
Exactly. You strike me. You seem like a real logical person. You strike me as the type who you don't have to be hit over the head. If somebody just gives you some good information that seems logical and is low risk, and you seem like, yeah, I'm on board for that. And I'm the same way. I don't have to hit rock bottom. You don't have to hit me over the head with the information. Just tell me something that makes sense, and I will open my mind to it.
And I think what's hard is that the other stuff makes sense too, right? Like, like there seems to be this. It seems logical. Calories in, calories out. Maybe more. It all seems logical until you do it 17 times and end up in the same place every time. And it's like, okay, so something's not working. And in all honesty, when I found Dr. Fung, because I think he was one of the first people I found, just talking about how the body works and why calories in, calories out cannot work, it was like, why don't I remember this from science class? But because we weren't taught that in science class,
Yep.
right? But once you understand it, you can't not see it anymore. right?
You can't not see it. That's how I felt when I started learning about carnivore, especially. You can't not see it.
When you live it and you feel better. So, okay, here's the other elephant in the room. It's easy, right? Like it's simple, it's easy. It's just one thing you do, right? Just take your carbs out. And all of a sudden this magical stuff starts happening. And because it's simple and seems so easy, we think it's actually always easy. But yeah, if I were to, like any other craving that I have, if I don't drink for a few months, yeah, I'm going to do well. But as soon as I let it back in, it's harder to let it go that second time, harder to let it go that third time. And by the time you've let it go a few times, it's like all of a sudden I can't stay on it. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of people also have, is that it's so simple that we think it's easier than it is, but it's not as easy as it looks, right? I mean, it's easy, but it's not easy, right?
It's not, because I think we are just in a culture that has made it not easy. We have completely overcomplicated our diets, and that's by design. If the if the drug makers, and I'm not anti big pharma. I mean, there are some drugs that are miracles for people and give them legitimate quality of life. But there's also a lot of unnecessary prescribing out there for issues that could be resolved through food. And so I think that on its surface, it is the human diet is very simple. Just cut out the processed crap and don't overload yourself with carbs, um, and eat clean. And then, oh, where was I going with the rest of that train of thought? Oh, but I think that where people could get in trouble is if someone is led to think that it is complicated. They're just going to give up and say, I don't know, I can't figure it out, I don't know which diet to do, just prescribe me something so I can feel better.
Well, and you add to that, like this whole idea that yes, processed food, it's kind of sneaky, because if you want people to eat it, you need to make it taste as good as you can make it taste. And then you end up like stripping away any possible nutrient value. So I remember someone classifying it like we are the most malnourished, obese people. Like it's just like you're malnourished and you're obese, and it's almost it is an oxymoron, right? Like how's that possible? But that's what I was. That's what I was, right? And it's like, how do you today help people to understand that fat doesn't actually make you fat? For example, how do you get people to understand that your diabetes medication is making you more diabetic? It's like it almost sounds like conspiracy, but it's reality, and that's where the problem happens.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is the ultimate irony, that someone is obese and malnourished and their diabetes medication makes them diabetic. Yeah, it's really hard for me to reconcile that. Like, we live in a world where that's the case, and it's just so obviously wrong and bad. And I don't wish that for people. I just wish for people to be well and keep it simple. And that's my hope.
And by keeping it simple, it's understanding what the proper human diet is, right? If I know that my body is made of protein and fat, and that the only uh, macronutrients we can't actually create ourselves are protein and fat, then I focus my energy on getting those, right? When I'm looking for food, I'm trying to build a healthy body. I need to give my body what it needs to build a healthy body: protein and fat. And it's such a simple idea, again, that people believe that it's so easy. I don't have to do it right now. I can wait till, and waiting is it's wrong, right? Because if I wait too long, what damage am I creating? And some of these internal things, we only know when the organ actually stops working.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just not willing to take that gamble. I don't want to put myself in a world of pain by I'm going merrily along, eating standard American diet, and then I have a stroke. I want to. put all that off as long as possible and have quality of life. So I am with you.
You mentioned that, okay, so your husband is doing as much as he can, but of course his job and the way he travels, it's not necessarily helpful. But if you were talking to somebody, like just someone saying, "Hey, what you're doing is interesting," how would you help them to get started? Like, what's the thing that you would say to them? Hey, if you want to try this out, what is the thing that you wish you would have known that, oh, okay, that would have been good to know?
First of all, I would say just start and don't overthink it. And I learn a little more about them and what their goals are and what their current habits are. And instead of making them feel like they just had to boil the ocean, I would be like, okay, sounds like you eat a lot of fried foods. And every time you go out, you get a burger and a side of fries. Next time you go out, order the coleslaw instead of the fries. Instead of getting a soda, get get a glass of ice water. Just make one small change every day, see how you do, and then, if you're so inclined, then just snowball that gradually. But don't feel like you just have to turn your life upside down, throw everything in your kitchen in the trash. Because I think that any other message, I mean, some people are ready for something, a dramatic change. They're ready to gut their pantry. But I think most people are, the thought of that's a little scary. And I think that small wins can go a long way towards people saying, well, I took one small step. Let me try another one. Let me try a bigger step. So that would be my approach.
What I love about what you just said is you started with the food they were already eating. And
Mm.
I honestly feel like one of the things that drives me crazy is when I'm watching keto channels that are all about recipes. Like, do I really need a new recipe to know what kind of chicken I like or what kind of beef I like or what kind, it drives me nuts. Why can't I just look at what I'm already eating and exactly what you said, remove the high carb things? It's perfection.
Violet, speaking of foods, you had asked me about any creative recipes or ideas. Do you have any creative recipes that you kind of the feather in your cap?
Whenever we're eating as a family, um, the kids sometimes will choose what are we eating, right? And so when they choose, we've created like our versions of whatever they're having. So, for example, if they want burgers, then we're going to have a bunch of patties. That's easy. But the one that I think I'm proud of is having tacos in lettuce leaves.
Nice.
And it's so simple. It's so logical. It's like you would have put lettuce in it. So just use the lettuce to make it.
Yep. It's crunchy. Yeah. And yeah, I love,
And we've actually done it with cabbage leaves as well, but we prefer the lettuce leaves.
well, yeah. And I love things like that. So you can feel like, not that it really, you reach a certain point where you don't care, but sometimes you don't want to be the weirdo at the table that's eating something completely different. You've got a taco that's almost like a taco and you don't feel like so much of a weirdo. But if you're with your family, you don't feel like a weirdo anyway. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Actually, I'm so used to being the weirdo at the table because I've never been able to eat beef. So like I've always been the like, nope, can't have that. Interestingly, in a taco, most of the stuff you could actually eat, which is what I think is kind of cool about it. Like, for example, if they want pizza, we're having a different meal. So, which is fine. But I think it's always interesting when you can just re reformat the healthy parts of the food so that you can eat what you feel like eating.
Also along those lines, because you mentioned pizza, is one thing that I miss is the convenience of just being able to go grab a pizza somewhere. You're on your way home from something. So that's, I would say that's one area where I still have a little bit of a hump to get over. I don't ever go get pizzas, but those nights where you're like, oh, I forgot to thaw something and I just don't know what to do. That's when stuff like those low carb burritos come in really handy. Because that's kind of along the lines of the pizza family. It's something really savory and it's got some nice spice and some cheese in it, but you don't go completely off the rails. But what are your thoughts? And what do you do when you have one of those nights where you're like, I got nothing?
So, funny enough, well, I have two things to say. I'll start with what I got nothing. So if I haven't defrosted anything, whatever, it really depends on whether or not I'm hungry. Like that's really the only determining factor. If I'm actually hungry and I could do eggs and sausage really quickly. So I probably would do that if I was actually hungry. But if I wasn't, I'll eat tomorrow. And like that's something I can do. I'll do a 48-hour fast in doesn't matter to me if I'm not hungry. But going back to the pizza part of the story, I used to make like a carnivore pizza because the crust was made of meat, and I was doing that whenever they were having pizza, and like my spouse and I would have carnivore pizza. And honestly, it got to the point where like it's too much work. I don't care enough to do that work. So I've just stopped making it. He never made it, so he doesn't make it. It's like, yeah, we'll have pork chops, or we'll have some like. And it's funny to me how pizza used to be my go-to food, and now it's too much work. So if I have a maybe on a Saturday, lots of time, but I mean, I haven't made a carnivore pizza in I want to venture to say almost a year.
Yeah, that is quite a turnaround. And I see how you could arrive at that place, mentally where you're like, I'm just not doing that.
Don't forget, I started as a person who doesn't like to cook. So
Oh, yeah. Well, that's important to mention. Yeah, I don't mind cooking so much. Mine's mostly the cleanup. I do miss cooking a little bit and being kind of inventive in the kitchen and stuff, but not enough to stop doing this because there's still so much you can do. There's so many ways to cook meat. There's so many meats you can cook. There's ways to season them to where you can, within the confines of your plan. I'm kind of with you there that not having to cook. I mean, it actually saves quite a bit of time in your day, right?
what's funny too is that my spouse, he's the one that likes to cook. And sometimes you'll see him like cooking. You think there's an army coming of all the meats he has going, just because he's just, oh, have some variety. And, like the kids are teenagers, they're going to eat it anyways. And just like, it's like, okay. But I do feel like no matter what your preference is, I don't like to cook. He likes to cook. It doesn't change the fact that you're going to do whatever helps you to be on track and feel happy with your meal. Because ultimately, if I'm happy with my meal, I will just keep doing it.
Yeah, I don't find myself getting bored with. I could eat eggs and sausage, bacon every day, and have for long stretches. Because to your point, if you are feeling lazy and tired, then bacon and eggs is kind of the new pizza. That's the convenience food because it's so easy and it tastes awesome.
And even like for myself, I will say that when people ask me like, "Oh, what do you eat?" and like, "Tell us what you eat in a day," and it's like I'm so boring. It's like I have 4 meals on rotation. That's it. That's all. It's like you do not want to eat like me. And but the thing is, it's good because it's easy and it keeps me on track. 4 meals in rotation. There we go. So it's like I think ultimately one of the things that I hope that people get from these kind of conversations is we think that food has to be this big spectacle, and it has to be and honestly, we have fun. I know I have fun doing other things.
Exactly, because I'm not spending a ton of time in the kitchen trying to think up creative side dishes, something that goes with whatever our meat is. Yeah, if you're whipping up bacon and eggs and it's delicious, then you can move on with your life and finish your Netflix documentary or whatever. Hang out with your family.
And go do things with your family, which is the other big part, right? Like go climbing like we've been doing, or doing like all the things that we've been doing, go snowboarding and all the things we do because we're not stuck to the kitchen all the time, which is so much fun.
And you can do those things because you feel good enough to go snowboarding with your teenagers. I love that.
I know that you said you don't have a channel.
Yeah,
So what I'm hoping for is that you'll be able to answer some comments on the bottom of this video.
sure.
And I would love if there is somewhere people can chat with you, you can let them know.
I don't know. I don't have any social media or a channel, but I'll tell you what, Violet, I just love how you're building this wellness warrior community. I'm happy to be a part of it. I want to be a friend to the community. And I have to admit that seeing you doing what you're doing and some of the other folks on YouTube, I have been kicking around the idea of just starting up a channel. But yeah, to answer your question, I'll answer comments. And if there's anything I can ever do in the future to help support your channel again, you know how to reach me.
I mean, I want to thank you, Kelli. I hope everyone thanks you in the comments. And there's a video on the screen right there that's going to help you to get started with your healthy keto, carnivore, low carb, whatever you choose to do, just get started. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys again next week.